What if I told you that everything you need to transform your financial life is hidden in a single verse from the Bible? Yes, just as you heard. Most people struggle with their finances because they focus only on what they can receive but ignore a powerful spiritual key that has already changed the lives of thousands. What's curious is that this principle isn't just about money, it's about a complete shift in how you see your resources, your purpose, and your blessings. And here's the most surprising part: most people have read it, but few truly understand it. This verse isn't just a motivational quote, it's a revelation of how biblical prosperity works. Today, I'm going to teach you how to apply it in a practical and spiritual way, and I assure you that by the end of this video, you'll see how this knowledge can change everything for you. But before we begin, I want to ask you for something: subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to reach 1,000 followers before the end of January, and together we can help more people discover these transformative principles. Now, I want you to eliminate any distractions, close other tabs, put your phone on silent, and pay close attention. What you're about to learn might be exactly what you've been searching for, and pay special attention to the final point because the ending will surprise you and could be the missing piece to unlocking the flow of blessings in your life. A long time ago, a young king asked for wisdom, not wealth or fame. Solomon understood that wisdom was the foundation for everything else. God, impressed by his humility, not only granted him wisdom but also unimaginable riches and prosperity. The story of Solomon teaches us that true prosperity begins with a generous heart and a willingness to give. Just as Solomon blessed his nation, God expects what we have to be used to bless others, opening doors to receive even more. The Bible states it clearly: it is more blessed to give than to receive, Acts 20 verse 35. This isn't just a beautiful phrase, it's a profound spiritual principle that, when understood, transforms lives. This verse contains a powerful promise: generosity is the path to abundance because no one can give without first having received. And the more we give, the more we receive. Generosity activates the cycle of biblical prosperity. Some people live like reservoirs, accumulating and holding on to everything they receive, while others flow like rivers, allowing blessings to pass through them and reach more people. But here's a crucial detail: the reservoir eventually stops receiving because there's no more space to store. So, think about this: are we living like flowing rivers or stagnant reservoirs? In a world where so many struggle to find financial stability, this verse highlights a key truth: it's not just about the physical act of giving but about adopting a spiritual posture. The Bible teaches us that God's promises for finances are directly connected to our willingness to share and practice righteousness. This is why many do not experience biblical financial abundance. They are waiting for something without first releasing what they already have in their hands. Consider the stories of those who understood this principle, like entrepreneurs who started with little but prospered because they applied the principle of giving, even when it seemed like everything was lost. The act of giving in faith opened the doors to miracles. How many times has God placed something in your hands, and you've held onto it out of fear of losing it? How many times have you ignored the opportunity to be a channel of blessing to others? We all face daily challenges, doubts, and anxieties, especially when money is scarce. But here's the truth: God doesn't call you to give because He needs it. He calls you to give because He wants to transform you. It's an invitation to live like Solomon, who trusted fully that God was his infinite source of provision. As you reflect on this, remember, the keys to abundance are not in what you hold onto but in what you give with faith. True prosperity begins when we understand that everything we have comes from God and that by giving, we align ourselves with His plan to be a blessing in the lives of others. If you need prayer for your finances or any situation you are facing, leave your request in the comments. We are here to support you in prayer, believing that God can transform your life. Imagine a river flowing powerfully, bringing life wherever it goes. Now imagine a reservoir that keeps all the water it receives, without letting it flow. Which of the two do you think has a greater purpose? This is the principle of giving to receive. Just as a river is never depleted because it allows water to flow, our lives are filled when we learn to release and share what we have. But when we act like reservoirs, accumulating and holding on, we inevitably block the blessing. Proverbs 11 verse 25 captures this perfectly. Asterisk, a generous soul will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Asterisk, this is not just spiritual poetry, it's a life-transforming truth. Those who choose to give not only see their own needs met, but also experience a peace and fulfillment that money alone can never provide. It's a principle proven over generations, and it always works in everyday life. This concept is everywhere. Companies that share their resources and reinvest in meaningful causes tend to thrive. Individuals who give their time, ideas, or finances to others often create unexpected opportunities and build deep connections. This is no coincidence. Giving aligns us with God's purpose for our lives, opening doors we could never open on our own. Consider the story of Andrew Carnegie, a man who built one of the greatest fortunes of his time and then dedicated his life to giving. He established libraries, educational institutions, and projects that transformed entire communities. Carnegie understood that wealth without purpose was empty, so he turned his resources into a river of blessings that continues to flow even after his death. However, many of us live with a scarcity mindset. We hold tightly to the little we have, fearing it will never be enough. But this mindset is a trap. Like a reservoir, we disconnect ourselves from the flow of abundance. Instead, when we give, we declare through our actions that we trust in a God who is unlimited in resources and generosity. Giving doesn't always have to involve money. Sometimes it's your time, your skills, or simply a listening ear. Here's the secret. The more you give, the greater your capacity to receive. It's a virtuous cycle that reflects God's design. By giving, we become part of His work, bringing light and hope to those who need it most. Every time you choose to share, you're breaking chains of fear and spiritual poverty. You're opening your life to the inexhaustible flow of God's blessings. So, are we ready to stop being reservoirs and become rivers? If you are breathing, you have already received something from God. The simple fact that you are alive is proof of His generosity. Yet, how often do we focus on what we lack instead of being grateful for what we already have? The truth is, gratitude is the foundation of prosperity. Acknowledging what we have received frees us from anxiety and prepares us to give with joy. The Bible makes it clear in Luke 6 verse 38, asterisk, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. When we give thanks, something powerful happens. We stop seeing our limitations and start seeing possibilities. Those who give don't do so merely because they have, but because they recognize that what they have is not theirs, but a gift from God. This shift in perspective transforms us from mere recipients to collaborators with God. If you have received, then you have the privilege of participating in His work of blessing others. A powerful example of this truth is the story of John D. Rockefeller, who began tithing with the little he earned as a young worker. He didn't wait to be rich to give, he simply believed that the little in his hands could be multiplied when used for others. What's incredible is that his generosity not only benefited others, but also led him to become one of the wealthiest men of his time. Rockefeller understood that by giving, he became a river and not a reservoir. But here's a dilemma many of us face. How can we give when we feel like we don't have enough? The answer is simple yet challenging. It all begins with gratitude. Giving is not about the amount, it's about trust. When we acknowledge what we have received, we realize there is always something we can share, even in the most difficult moments. God doesn't call us to give because He needs what we have. He calls us to give because we need to trust in Him. Every act of generosity reminds us that our provision doesn't depend on our circumstances, but on His faithfulness. It's an act of faith that breaks chains of fear and connects us to His abundance. Gratitude not only transforms the way we think, but also opens the door to more blessings. This is a principle that seems to go against human logic. The more you give, the more you receive. But it's not just about money, it's also about time, words of encouragement, and acts of love. Everything you sow, you will eventually reap. So the next time you feel like you have nothing to offer, remember this: if you are breathing, you have already received, and if you have received, you can give. It's a divine cycle designed to fill you with peace and purpose. Have you ever felt stuck, as if blessings simply weren't coming into your life? Often, the cause lies in something we don't see at first glance: the habit of holding back. Living like a reservoir, accumulating and keeping everything out of fear of losing it, may seem logical, but in the long run, it leads to scarcity. A reservoir, by not allowing water to flow, eventually becomes stagnant. In contrast, a river that constantly gives never stops receiving. This mindset of holding back is deeply tied to fear. We think that if we let go of the little we have, there will never be more. But here's the truth: God cannot fill closed hands. By holding back, we limit our capacity to receive. The Bible teaches powerful principles about finances and generosity. For example, in Proverbs 11 verse 24, we are told, "There is one who scatters and yet increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty." The problem with living like a reservoir isn't just material, it's spiritual. We disconnect from the purpose of being channels of blessing. Many people work hard, save, invest, and yet feel an emptiness. Why? Because they are focused on accumulating instead of sharing. God's true promises for finances are designed to flow through us, not stop with us. History provides us with great examples. Consider the early days of Amazon, when Jeff Bezos prioritized investing in improving the customer experience over maximizing initial profits. It was a decision that seemed risky, but that mindset of giving value first transformed Amazon into one of the most prosperous companies in the world. Bezos understood that flow, not retention, is the key to growth. However, many of us fall into a scarcity mindset. We hold on to the little we have, thinking we are being responsible. But here's the secret: holding back what God has given you isn't prudence, it's distrust. And distrust closes the door to abundance. Instead of asking, "how much can I hold on to?" Ask yourself, "what can I give today to make room for more?" Living like a river doesn't mean being reckless, it means trusting that God is your source. It means giving what you can, even when it feels like you don't have much. Remember, the river flows because it is connected to a greater source. We are also like rivers when we recognize that everything we have comes from Him. Every time you choose to give, something changes within you. You are declaring that you don't rely on your own resources, but on a God who is able to do much with little. So today, stop living like a reservoir. Start flowing like a river and watch how God transforms your life into a channel of blessings. Now that we understand the importance of flowing like a river, an inevitable question arises: how can we give when we are facing times of scarcity? It's easy to be generous when everything is going well, but difficult times are the true test of faith. It is in those moments that giving becomes a radical act of trust in God, a declaration that our provision does not depend on our circumstances but on His faithfulness. The Bible offers us a powerful example in the story of the widow of Zarephath, 1 Kings 17. During a severe drought, this woman had only a handful of flour and a little oil, just enough to make a final meal for her and her son before they would succumb to hunger. But the prophet Elijah asked her to do the unthinkable, to first bake him some bread. The widow could have held on to the little she had, but she chose to trust. Her generosity unleashed a miracle. The oil and flour never ran out. Do you feel like that widow, looking at your resources and thinking they won't be enough? It's natural. We've all been there, counting every penny, wrestling with the fear of not having enough for tomorrow. But here's the truth: the little in your hands, when given in faith, becomes much in the hands of God. Giving during difficult times is not a loss, it's sowing into the soil of divine provision. There is something transformative about choosing to give when it seems like you have nothing. It's an act of rebellion against fear and anxiety. When we give, we not only challenge our own doubts but also send a clear message to heaven: we trust that God is our source. God is not limited by our bank accounts, our debts, or our daily struggles. This doesn't mean we should be reckless or give beyond our means. Generosity should always be guided by wisdom. But when we give wisely, even in tough times, we align ourselves with God's limitless provision and open the door to miracles. Even in the darkest moments, there is always something we can share: our time, skills, or words of encouragement. When we give, even the smallest gesture, we are sowing hope both in our lives and in the lives of others. Think about how small acts of generosity can have a profound impact. A kind word can change someone's day, and a helping hand can open unexpected doors. Giving doesn't just affect those who receive, it transforms those who give. It makes us more open, more connected to others, and, most importantly, more aligned with God's heart. If today you find yourself in the midst of a financial or emotional storm, remember that giving isn't about how much you have, it's about how much you trust. God is looking for people willing to release what they have, not to take from them, but to fill them with something better. Your generosity, even in times of difficulty, is a key that can open doors you never expected. In a world where competition and accumulation seem to be the norm, the principle that it is better to give than to receive might seem outdated or even illogical. Yet, many of today's greatest successes are built on this very principle. Living with generosity doesn't just bring spiritual benefits, it also yields practical and tangible rewards. When you understand how to apply this principle in your daily life, you begin to unlock a steady flow of opportunities, resources, and connections. Take the example of smart investments. Many of the most successful entrepreneurs don't hoard their initial profits, they reinvest them. This not only multiplies their resources, but also creates long-term impact. Applying this principle to your personal finances means not just saving for yourself, but also investing in causes, projects, or people that generate mutual benefits. The Bible refers to this as sowing to reap, and this principle is just as relevant today. Passive income is another modern example of this principle. Think about how investments in properties or well-managed businesses generate consistent income over time. This not only allows people to meet their own needs, but also gives them the margin to be generous. By sharing part of what they earn, they multiply their impact and often see unexpected returns. This is a direct reflection of God's promises for finances, where generosity opens doors that effort alone cannot. But generosity isn't limited to money. It includes time, encouragement, and other acts of kindness that create ripple effects in our lives and the lives of others. Companies that thrive today, like Patagonia, understand that creating value goes beyond profit. Patagonia invests a significant portion of its earnings in environmental causes, earning the loyalty of its customers and building a reputation that transcends generations. This demonstrates that divine justice and prosperity go hand in hand when resources are placed in service of a greater purpose. In your daily life, this principle can take many forms. It could be a small gesture, like helping a colleague with their work or taking the time to encourage someone in need. Generosity creates an ecosystem where everyone prospers because when you give, you build relationships and foster trust. These connections often turn into opportunities you never imagined. The modern world often pushes us to prioritize our needs and protect ourselves. But true biblical prosperity is not just about what you earn, it's about how you use what you have to impact others. It's like a farmer who, instead of storing all his harvest, chooses to plant some of it. That seed may seem like a loss at first, but over time, it yields an abundant harvest. When we live according to this principle, something changes within us. Generosity frees us from the fear of loss and connects us to an infinite source, God. He promises in His Word that biblical financial abundance is the result of a life aligned with His principles. Giving is the key that unlocks resources, ideas, and connections. Being generous not only transforms your life, but also impacts those around you. Think about this: every act of generosity, no matter how small, is a seed you plant in the lives of others. But more than that, generosity inspires. Generous people have the power to mobilize others, to create a movement that transcends the moment and leaves a lasting legacy. This is leadership in its purest form, influencing through example, not just words. A generous leader doesn't withhold their knowledge, resources, or time. Consider the example of Solomon, who used his wealth and wisdom to build the temple, a place that symbolized the connection between God and His people. Generosity is not just an action, it's a way of living that shapes your character, influences others, and aligns you with the limitless provision of God. Solomon understood that his prosperity was not solely for his own benefit, but to serve an entire generation. His legacy is remembered not because he accumulated wealth, but because he used it with purpose. In the modern world, a notable example is Chuck Feeney, the entrepreneur who gave away almost his entire fortune during his lifetime, investing in education, health, and humanitarian causes. Although he could have lived as an eccentric millionaire, he chose to influence by leading with generosity. Feeney not only left a tangible impact, but also inspired other billionaires to commit to philanthropy. This demonstrates that generosity doesn't just transform individual lives, but entire communities. But what does this have to do with you? More than you might think. You don't need to be wealthy to be a generous leader. Every time you choose to give, you're showing others a different path. When you share your resources, your ideas, or even your words of encouragement, you influence those around you. You make it clear that there's a greater purpose in everything we do. Generous leadership has a multiplying effect. When you give, others are inspired to do the same. It's like lighting a candle. Your light doesn't dim by sharing it, but the space becomes filled with more clarity and brightness. This principle is just as powerful in personal relationships, at work, and within the community. Every act of generosity has the potential to build something greater than ourselves. God calls us not just to receive blessings, but to be channels of blessing. When we embrace this calling, we don't just experience His abundance, we also become His instruments for transforming lives. This is the essence of biblical prosperity. It's not about how much you have, but about how much impact you create with what you have. Imagine what would happen if more people lived by this principle. If each of us decided to give more than we receive, we could transform families, communities, and even nations. It's an invitation to think big, lead with the heart, and allow God to use us for His purpose. Write in the comments, "I am a channel of blessing to others," and declare this truth with faith, believing that God will use you to impact lives. Trust that as you give, He will multiply what you have to fulfill this purpose. Generosity goes far beyond finances. While giving money is an important way to impact lives, we often underestimate the power of other acts of generosity: our time, our skills, our words. These actions, though invisible to many, have an eternal impact. Giving is not just an act of obedience, it is an act of transformation, both for the one who receives and the one who practices it. Consider the story of Barnabas, known as the son of encouragement, in Acts 4 verses 36 to 37. He didn't just sell his property to support the early believers, he also dedicated his life to mentoring and guiding others, as he did with Paul. Barnabas didn't limit his generosity to material resources. He invested his time and heart in people, becoming a leader who impacted generations through his generosity. His life demonstrates that giving goes far beyond money. In everyday life, giving beyond money can mean simple yet powerful actions: listening to someone who needs to be heard, dedicating time to teach something you know, or using your talents to help solve a problem. These gestures have the power to build deep relationships, plant seeds of hope, and show God's love in action. Generosity, in any form, creates ripples that extend far beyond the moment, transforming lives and leaving a legacy of encouragement and care. Giving also transforms us internally. It frees us from a scarcity mindset and connects us to a greater purpose. When you choose to invest in others, you are participating in God's work. You are saying, "I will not just receive, I will be part of God's divine plan to bless the world." This act of faith opens doors and creates a never-ending cycle of abundance. The emotional and spiritual impact of giving is profound. Studies show that people who help others experience greater happiness and a deeper sense of purpose in their lives. Why? Because giving reflects the heart of the Creator. He designed the world for blessings to flow, and when we give, we align ourselves with His design, becoming His image to those around us. Giving beyond money also means building a legacy. When you invest in people, your impact multiplies. It's not just about what you achieve, but about the lives you touch and how you inspire others to follow the same path. That's the essence of generous leadership, creating an impact that transcends. So, if you've ever thought you have nothing to give, remember this: your time, your words, your willingness to listen are powerful seeds. God can use what you have in your hands, no matter how small it may seem, to change lives. The true power of giving isn't in the amount, but in the intention. Now that we've explored this powerful verse and the principles surrounding it, it's time to reflect on how you can apply them in your daily life. It's not just about learning, but about acting. Every teaching, every biblical example invites us to live in a way that honors God and transforms our perspective on the resources He has entrusted to us. For example, remember that it is more blessed to give than to receive. This isn't just spiritual advice, it's an invitation to be a river that flows, bringing blessings to those around us. Think about how you can start being more generous today, not just with your finances, but with your time, your words, and your talents. What small steps can you take to align your life with this eternal principle? Great men of faith like Solomon, or even modern figures like Chuck Feeney, show us that true biblical financial abundance comes from using what we have to impact others. This principle is just as powerful today as it was in biblical times. By applying these principles, you are inviting God to pour out His abundance on you, knowing that what you receive will flow to others. If you still feel unsure about how to start, I encourage you to take this teaching as a personal challenge. Take a step in faith, trust that God will provide, and watch how He works in your life. No matter how small your action may seem, what truly matters is the heart with which you do it. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, I recommend watching the next one, 6 Businesses That Rarely Fail According to the Bible. In that video, you'll learn how God's Word elevates principles that are already proven to be successful to an entirely new level. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming content. May God bless you in every area of your life and fill you with His wisdom, peace, and provision.